So you've built your website's skeleton with HTML, but let's be honest, right now it's just bare bones. In this explainer, we're going to map out the entire CSS journey. This is the language that gives your site its skin, its style, and really its personality.
I mean, just look at this. On the left, you've got a plain document. Yeah, the content's all there, but it has zero life. On the right, that's the exact same content, just transformed by CSS. It's a night and day difference, right? This is the power we're going to learn how to harness.
And this quote just hits the nail on the head. CSS isn't just about splashing some color on a page. It's about creating an entire experience. It's what controls the balance, the flow, and the rhythm that makes a website actually feel good to use.
All right, so every journey has to start somewhere. For us, that means getting a handle on the basic grammar of CSS. You know, before you can paint a masterpiece, you've got to learn how to hold the brush. You know, the cool thing is, every single style you'll ever write, no matter how wild, follows this exact same structure. It's always answering two simple questions. First, the selector asks, what are we styling? Is it a heading, a paragraph? Then, the declaration block says, how do we want to style it? We use a property, like color, and give it a value, like blue. That's it.
So, how do we target things? Well, that brings us to the two big workhorses of CSS, classes and IDs. A class, which you'll see starts with a dot, is kind of like a paint roller. You can use it over and over again on tons of different elements. An ID, on the other hand, starts with a hash. Think of it like a sniper rifle. It's designed to target one and only one unique element on the entire page.
Okay, but what happens if two rules try to style the same thing? This is where the C in CSS, the Cascade, comes into play. It's basically a simple three-step tiebreaker. First, the browser looks for the important flag. That's the ultimate trump card. If there isn't one, it calculates specificity. An ID will always beat a class, and if it's still a tie, the last rule written in your file is the one that wins. Simple as that.
Okay, now that we know the rules of the language, we can finally start being artists. This next part is all about painting the canvas. We're talking aesthetics, and maybe even more importantly, the spacing that gives a design clarity and rhythm. This is where your site really starts to get its personality. We can set the whole mood with typography, picking the right fonts and sizes. We build out a look with color, whether it's simple names like red or super precise hex codes. And of course, we set the stage with backgrounds, solid colors, cool images, or even subtle gradients.
But before we can actually arrange anything on the page, we have to understand the single most important concept in all of CSS layout, and it's this. Every single element on a web page is a rectangular box. That's it. Once you truly get that, layout becomes so much easier.
And this breaks it down perfectly. Right in the middle, you've got your content. Wrapped around that is padding. Think of that as breathing room inside the box. Then you have the border, which is the frame itself, and finally, on the very outside, you have the margin. That's the invisible space that pushes other boxes away. Getting the difference between inner padding and outer margin is absolutely crucial.
Okay, so we've made our boxes. Now for the real question. How do we arrange them on the page? Let's dive into the powerful tools that let us build modern, responsive web architecture.
When you talk about modern layouts, these two are the heavy hitters. And the difference is actually pretty simple. Flexbox is your go-to when you're arranging items in a single line, either in a row or in a column. Perfect for things like a nav bar. Grid, though, that's for the whole shebang. It manages both rows and columns at the same time. It's how you build an entire page layout. Of course, a modern website isn't just static, right? We can add life and give users feedback with a little bit of motion. Transitions are awesome for simple, smooth changes, like a button changing color when you hover over it. For more complex stuff, we use keyframe animations to control every single step of the motion, like a loading spinner or an element sliding onto the screen.
And now for the final stage of our journey. This is where we take everything we've learned and level up, making our designs professional, adaptable, and ready for the real world.
This is the million-dollar question for any modern web developer, isn't it? We write one set of code, but it has to look amazing on a tiny phone screen, a tablet, a laptop, and a giant monitor. So, how in the world do we do that? Well, the secret sauce is something called a media query. It's basically your CSS asking the browser a question, like, hey, are you wider than 768 pixels? If the browser answers yes, then a whole new set of styles can kick in. This is exactly how we get a single-column layout on a phone to magically transform into a two-column layout on a tablet. Now let's talk about being professional and making your life easier. We need to talk about CSS variables. Instead of typing out your main brand color 50 different times, you just store it in one variable. Need to update that color? You change it in one spot, and poof, the entire website updates. It creates a single source of truth for your design.
And finally, when projects get really big, just writing CSS isn't enough. We need strategies to keep our code clean and manageable. This means using smart naming conventions to avoid stepping on our own toes, and using modern tools that help us keep our styles organized, which is a lifesaver in big, complex apps. So let's step back for a second. You now see the entire path. We've gone from the basic grammar of a CSS rule, to painting the canvas with colors and fonts, to building complex layouts, and finally to making it all professional and responsive. This whole roadmap is a huge checkpoint on your developer journey.
You've seen the map. You know the way, from that first line of code all the way to the most advanced techniques. The only question left is, are you ready to master the language that brings the entire web to life?
If your answer is yes, then just know that this explainer was the 30,000-foot view. To really get your hands dirty and master each of these concepts, follow our full CSS roadmap playlist. We'll dive deep into every single one of these checkpoints, step by step.
This is Developer Roadmaps. Map your path, build your career.